roughly 77 million Americans have already voted early. And remember, the election is likely to largely be decided across 7 key swing states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos, is in Washington. She joins us now this morning to kick things off. Vassy, good morning to you. Let's begin with the mood in Washington. What is it like? What are you seeing on the streets? Already security measures are being put in place.
Yeah, there are some security measures being put in place. I'm very close to the White House, and there's already a lot of security kind of on a normal basis around here. I think the sense I have from talking to people, and this area is overwhelmingly Democrat, it means, overwhelmingly so that way, is that it is going to be a nail biter, right? There is nobody willing at this point to, for example, offer me a prediction about what they think will happen for certain, or even if there will be an outcome tomorrow or 2 days from now, rather, at this time. I think there's a lot of hesitancy to go there just because of what you described as not only the closeness with which the two candidates are on a national polling basis, but those 7 key swing states. The lead that either candidate has in either of them is so thin, it's always within the margin of error. So it's literally impossible at this point to predict what will happen. And that's why the stakes feel so incredibly, part of the reason I should say the stakes feel so incredibly high.
It was a weekend of closing arguments from both candidates. They both had very different messages, and Harris was not even mentioning Trump by name yesterday. What are you hearing, and what's your take on who had a stronger finish to this campaign?
Well, I thought it was really interesting that Harris didn't mention Trump a lot. I felt like the last 10 days had been very focused, partly due to the rhetoric being employed by Trump and his surrogates over the last 10 days. The Harris campaign had been focused on him and the threat that they characterized that he posed. And so I think it's interesting that she's shifting her message in these last few days about what she plans to do or what she hopes to do, what kind of president she would be if she were to win. I think that is largely aimed at, again, those 7 swing states in the last election. It's about 500,000 people in those states that ended up determining the outcome of the election, these undecideds. It's hard to believe that there are people who haven't made a choice between these two candidates, but there are. And they are less interested in why not to vote for somebody. That, of course, will keep them on the couch. Now they need a message, and they really have needed a message about why they should vote for somebody. So my understanding is that message is primarily geared toward them. As far as Trump's last few days, that clip that you played is quite astounding. I think it is one I know that there's a sense that everyone's kind of numb to the rhetoric that he has employed or that his campaign has employed just because there have been so many controversial moments. But the Harris campaign seems to think in the last 10 days, particularly the rhetoric around Puerto Rico and then the use of garbage. And I know there was a different use by Joe Biden as well, but the way in which the Trump campaign has been speaking, they feel has punched through in certain elements. I don't know whether that's true, whether that manifests in the outcome of the election, but I think it is something to note that the rhetoric has become perhaps even more negative, if you can believe it, more controversial, if you can believe it, and whether or not that ultimately makes a difference, I don't know. His message is very much geared on the economy, right? And on sort of the record of the Biden-Harris administration and moving forward from that. It's just the way in which he's speaking about it that could prove to be an advantage for Harris.
Right. And I guess we'll figure out in the next few days whether or not that rally, that MAGA rally in New York was perhaps a turning point for Trump's campaign. I want to ask you lastly, Vassy, what does the election outcome mean for Canada? I know that's a tough question to answer in TV time, but nonetheless, for our Canadian viewers, what do you think?
I think it means it depends on obviously who wins. I think when it comes to Kamala Harris in particular on the trade file, otherwise it's steady as she goes. I would anticipate, but on the trade file, she is one of 10 senators. I know you've been reporting on this who voted against the passage of the new NAFTA a number of years ago. She has signaled that she would look at 2026 as not just a review of the deal, but perhaps an opportunity to renegotiate. So has Donald Trump. So NAFTA, I think, becomes another focal point yet again. The other thing I would point to is we spoke to Kelly Craft over the weekend on Question Period, who was Trump's ambassador to Canada. She signaled that defense spending is number one in Trump's eyes, bar none. Doesn't matter what information we present about how valuable trade with Canada is. If we aren't spending more on defense and spending faster than the targets that we have laid out, she directly tied that to the economic relationship we could entertain with the United States under Donald Trump. So those are the things that I would be watching for in the as the outcome actually becomes evident, and then we figure out what this all means for us.
Vassy, thanks so much for that. CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos, joining us this morning from Washington.